You know that feeling. You're staring at just this flood of information about cybersecurity, what you need to do, what threats are out there, and it just feels, well, overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where do you even begin? And maybe more importantly, how do you know if the effort you are putting in is actually making a difference? Is it, getting you closer to being truly secure?
It's a huge challenge, right? Because cybersecurity isn't static. It's constantly changing, and it touches, well, pretty much every part of an organization today.
Uh-huh.
You really need a way to cut through all that noise, find a common way to talk about risk, and get a structured path forward that actually works for your specific situation.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're going deep into a really key document that's become a cornerstone for managing cyber risk globally, actually,
That's the NIST cybersecurity framework.
specifically version 2.0. And this isn't just some technical manual. It's guidance, really,
Right.
from the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's designed to give organizations a clear way to understand and manage their cybersecurity posture.
Yeah, think of it like providing a universal language, a kind of taxonomy of the high-level outcomes you want to achieve.
Right.
It helps different parts of an organization and even different organizations altogether speak the same language about cybersecurity risk. And that's crucial regardless of their technical background.
So our mission in this deep dive, we're going to unpack this framework, really explore its core components, and show you how you can actually, use it.
We're sort of your guides through the material.
Exactly, helping you grab the most important insights and see how it can help you navigate that often overwhelming cyber landscape.
And it's interesting, NIST was pretty clear about the audience. While yes, the primary audience might be folks actually building or leading cybersecurity programs,
Uh-huh.
the framework is explicitly designed to be useful for, well, basically everyone involved. Executives, managers, tech teams, risk professionals, anyone involved in decisions about cybersecurity or influenced by it.
So not just the tech folks.
Yeah. Not at all. And it's built for organizations of any size, any sector, industry, government, academia, nonprofits, you name it, and any level of cybersecurity maturity. Whether you're a tiny startup or a massive enterprise, the CSF is meant to be applicable.
Okay, let's start unpacking this framework then. At its core, what is NIST CSF 2.0 really all about?
Well, fundamentally, it's about helping organizations, doesn't matter if they're large or small, public or private, tech-heavy or not, manage and reduce their cybersecurity risks effectively.
And a key principle right from the start is flexibility, isn't it?
Absolutely. This isn't some rigid one-size-fits-all mandate. That's really important. The framework understands that your unique risks, how much risk you're willing to accept, your risk appetite, and your specific mission mean that the way you implement it will look different.
It has to.
It really has to be tailored.
Right. And it focuses on outcomes, which I think is interesting, what you want to achieve, not precisely how you have to get there.
Exactly. These desired outcomes are described in a way that's meant to be understood by a pretty broad audience, even people without deep technical expertise.
And they're designed to be neutral, you said.
Yeah, neutral, not tied to a specific industry or country or even a particular technology.
That neutrality seems powerful. It means it can be used almost anywhere, with almost any tech stack, right? And alongside whatever security tools or standards you might already have in place.
Precisely. It gives you the what, and then you figure out the how based on your own resources, your needs, your context.
So what are the main pieces we need to understand? You mentioned components earlier.
Right. The document introduces 3 core components. There's the CSF core, then CSF organizational profiles, and finally, CSF tiers.
Core, profiles, tiers. Okay.
Think of them maybe as the language, the map, and the gauge for your cybersecurity journey.
I like that analogy. Language, map, gauge.
And it's really important to know that the main document itself isn't the whole story. NIST and others, too, provide a whole suite of online resources to supplement it.
Ah, okay. So it's not just the PDF.
Definitely not. These include things like informative references, those map the framework to other standards, implementation examples showing concrete actions, and quick start guides. They're all available on the NIST CSF website. You should really think of it all as a complete CSF portfolio to help you put the framework into practice.
And this version 2.0, it brought some significant updates, didn't it?
It did. There's a much stronger emphasis now on governance. We'll talk more about that, and managing supply chain risks. Both have become, well, incredibly critical topics recently.
You can see why.
Absolutely. NIST also paid special attention to those quick start guides, making them more accessible, especially for smaller organizations that might not have huge security teams.
That's good to hear.
And crucially, things like the implementation examples and informative references are now living resources online. They get updated regularly.
Which means they can keep pace better than a static document, right?
With how fast things change. Exactly. The threat landscape shifts constantly. They've also made it easier now to create and use those profiles we mentioned for mapping your current state and planning where you want to go.
So how do organizations typically use the CSF? The source mentions a few main ways.
Yeah, it highlights 3 key uses. First, to understand and assess. You use the framework's language to describe where you are now, your current posture, and where you want to be, your target posture. Then you can see the gaps and track progress over time.
Okay, understand and assess. What's second?
Second, to prioritize. It helps you identify, organize, and crucially, prioritize the actions you need to take, making sure those actions align with your overall mission, any requirements you have, legal, regulatory, and your organization's tolerance for risk.
Makes sense. You can't do everything at once.
Precisely. And third, to communicate. This one's huge. It provides that common language to talk about cybersecurity risks, capabilities, needs, expectations.
Both inside the organization.
Yes, internally across different departments, and externally, maybe with partners, customers, or regulators. It just helps get everyone on the same page.
It's important to remember, too, this is mostly voluntary, right?
In most cases, yes. Adoption is voluntary, although you might see governments or regulators integrate parts of it into policies or mandates. But its design makes it really adaptable and widely used globally. It's not tied to any one country's rules.
And it doesn't live in isolation. You mentioned using it with other things.
Right, that's key. The CSF isn't meant to replace everything else. You should use it alongside other frameworks, standards, guidelines you might already be using. It provides a strong foundation for cyber risk, but it fits into your broader tech risk management efforts. And always, always tailor it to your unique situation, your specific risks, your tolerances, your objectives.
Okay, let's dive into that first component you mentioned, the CSF core. You called it the language. If the CSF is the blueprint, the core is, well, the dictionary, the key.
Yeah, something like that. It's the nucleus, the taxonomy of those cybersecurity outcomes we've been talking about, the standardized terms.
How's it structured?
Well, if you picture it like a branching tree, the source has a figure 1, but you don't need it in front of you. It's organized from broad to specific. At the highest level, you have the functions.
Okay.
Within each function, there are categories of related outcomes. And then drilling down further, within each category, you find subcategories which get into more specific outcomes.
Functions, categories, subcategories. Got it. But you said it's not a checklist.
Absolutely critical point. The source is very clear. The core is not a checklist. The outcomes listed aren't just actions to tick off. They describe the state you want to achieve.
How you get there will vary.
Completely. The specific actions, the technologies, totally different for different organizations. Also, don't read anything into the order the functions or categories are listed or how big they look in a diagram. It doesn't imply importance or some required sequence.
Okay, so what are these functions? You said there are 6.
6 high-level functions. The document uses a real analogy for them. Figure 2, they are. Govern, GV. Identify, ID. Protect, PR, detect, DE, respond, RS, and recover, RC.
Govern, identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. The names give you a good sense of focus.
They do. They're action-oriented.
Let's walk through them based just on how the source describes them. First, govern, GV. You mentioned this is more prominent in 2.0.
Yes, very much so. They put it right in the center of that wheel diagram in this version. It's the foundation. This function is all about establishing, communicating, and monitoring your cybersecurity strategy, your expectations, your overall policy.
Why the central placement now?
Well, putting govern at the center really reflects how cybersecurity has shifted.
Yeah.
It's not just seen as a purely technical problem anymore. It's fundamentally a business risk.
Right.
So the govern function is critical because it informs how you prioritize and achieve the outcomes in all the other 5 functions. It ensures everything aligns with the organization's mission and stakeholder needs. It's that explicit link between cyber risk and broader enterprise risk management, or ERM.
What does it cover specifically?
It covers really essential elements like understanding your organizational context, defining your actual cybersecurity strategy, managing supply chain risk, which is huge now, assigning roles and responsibilities, setting policy, and importantly, ensuring oversight.
Okay, makes sense. Moving around the wheel, next is identify, ID.
Right. Identify is all about understanding your current cybersecurity risks. Simply put, Before you can protect anything, you have to know what you have to protect.
Assets, basically.
Exactly. Identifying and inventorying your assets. And that means more than just hardware and software. It includes your data, systems, people, even your suppliers. Understanding these assets and the risks they face is crucial for prioritizing your efforts effectively, making sure they align with the strategy you defined back under Govern.
And it's not just about finding problems.
No, the source also mentions this function involves identifying opportunities to improve your cybersecurity approach across all the other functions too. It's about continuous improvement.
Okay, after identify comes protect, PR.
Yep. Once you know what needs protecting and the risks involved, protect is about putting the safeguards in place to manage those risks.
The actual defenses.
Pretty much. It focuses on securing your assets to prevent bad things from happening or at least reduce their likelihood and impact if they do. Interestingly, the source also notes it can help you take advantage of opportunities maybe by securing a new technology that lets you launch a new service safely.
What kind of things fall under protect?
Key areas include managing identity and access control, providing awareness and training for your people, the human element, securing the data itself, protecting the platforms and systems you use, and ensuring the resilience of your underlying technology infrastructure.
Got it. Then comes detect, DE.
Detect is where you're actively looking for signs of trouble, signs of possible attacks or compromises. The goal here is timely discovery and analysis of anomalies, indicators of compromise, anything unusual that might signal something bad is happening or about to happen.
So finding the needle in the haystack.
In a way, yes. And effective detection is what enables you to actually take action in the next two functions.
Which are respond, RS.
Right. Once you've detected something suspicious or definitely malicious, respond is about taking action regarding that incident. It's focused on containing the effects.
So damage control.
That's a big part of it. It covers the whole incident process. Managing the incident itself, analyzing what happened, implementing mitigation actions to stop the bleeding, reporting on it, and communicating appropriately both inside and outside the organization.
And the final function, recover, RC.
Recover. This is all about getting things back to normal after an incident has occurred, restoring the assets and operations that were affected. The aim is timely restoration to minimize the negative impacts and ensure you can communicate effectively during that recovery process.
That wheel analogy you mentioned seems apt. They all connect.
They really do. You identify assets, protect them, detect issues with them, respond when something happens, and recover afterwards. And the planning and strategy work done under Govern and Identify provides the essential context for doing protect, detect, respond, and recover effectively.
And Govern in the middle influences all of them.
Constantly. It's informing how you approach all the others.
But you don't do them in strict order, right? It's not step one, step two.
No, absolutely not. The source really emphasizes they should be addressed concurrently. Activities under Govern, Identify, Protect, and Detect are continuous things you should always be doing. Respond and Recover are functions you prepare for continuously, but you execute them when incidents actually happen.
So all six play a role all the time, in a way.
Exactly. They all have roles across the entire incident lifecycle: preventing, preparing, discovering, managing.
Okay. And below functions, you mentioned categories and subcategories.
Right. Categories just group related outcomes within each function, and subcategories refine those categories further into more specific technical or management outcomes. The source notes they aren't meant to be totally exhaustive, like every single possible thing you could do.
But they give enough detail to guide you.
Precisely. Enough detail within each category.
And the scope of this core is pretty broad, covers all kinds of tech.
Very broad. It applies to all information and communications technology, so traditional IT, but also the Internet of Things, IoT, and operational technology, OT, the systems that manage physical processes, and it covers all environments, cloud, mobile, even looking ahead to things like AI. It's designed to be forward-looking.
Okay, so the core gives us the language, the set of outcomes, but how do you actually use that language to figure out where your organization stands and where it needs to go?
Ah, that's where the next two components come in, right? The profiles and tiers. Exactly. First, CSF profiles. An organizational profile is basically a description of your organization's current cybersecurity posture, or maybe your desired future posture, using those outcomes from the core.
So it's how you apply the core to yourself.
Precisely. It's the tool you use to tailor the framework, assess your own situation, prioritize your actions, and communicate about your cybersecurity based on your mission, your stakeholders, the threats you face, and your specific requirements.
You mentioned current and future postures.
Right. You typically create two types of profiles. A current profile. This maps the core outcomes you're achieving right now and maybe gives some context on how you're achieving them or to what extent.
Okay, where you are now.
Then a target profile. This specifies the desired outcomes you want to achieve in the future. This is based on your risk management objectives and should consider upcoming changes, new tech, new regulations, evolving threat trends.
Where you want to be. What about these community profiles the source mentions?
Yes. Those can be really useful. They're basically baseline sets of outcomes that have been developed and published for groups of organizations with shared interests.
Like an industry group.
Exactly. Maybe a specific industry sector or organizations using similar technologies or facing similar types of cyber threats. You could potentially grab a relevant community profile and use it as a starting point when you're building your own target profile. Save some work.
Okay, how do you actually use an organizational profile? Is there a process?
Yes, Figure 3 in the source lays it out as a cycle for continuous improvement. You basically repeat these steps.
Step 1.
Scope. First, define what the profile covers. Is it the whole organization? Just one department? A specific critical system, maybe focused on a certain type of threat? You could have multiple profiles with different scopes.
Okay, define the scope then.
Gather. Collect all the relevant info you need, existing policies, risk priorities, results from business impact analyses, compliance requirements, current practices, who does what, roles, all that stuff.
Gather the data. Next.
Create. Document this information by mapping it against the core outcomes you've selected. This builds your current profile. Then, based on your risk objectives, you define your target profile. And think about the risks you saw in your current profile when planning that target.
Create the current and target profiles. What's step 4?
Analyze gaps and create action plan. This is key. Compare your current profile to your target profile. Find the differences. Those are your gaps. Based on these gaps and your priorities, you develop a plan of action, maybe documented in your risk register or similar.
Find the gaps. Make a plan. And finally,
implement and update. Put your action plan into motion, do the work, then periodically you circle back, start the process again. Your current profile becomes the new baseline for the next improvement cycle.
it's a continuous loop.
Exactly. Continuous improvement.
And these profiles aren't just for internal navel gazing, right? You mentioned external uses.
Right. You can definitely use them externally. Maybe share your current profile with a business partner to show them your capabilities, or use a target profile to clearly communicate your cybersecurity requirements and expectations to your suppliers or other third parties, setting a target for them.
Okay, that covers profiles. What about the CSF tiers? You called them the gauge.
Yeah, the gauge. So while profiles describe what outcomes you're achieving or want to achieve using the core language, tiers characterize the rigor or sophistication of your actual cybersecurity risk governance and management practices.
So it's about how you manage risk, the maturity.
Exactly. Think of it as a measure of how mature and integrated your overall risk management approach is. Figure 4 in the source gives a visual, and Table 2 has more detail.
How many tiers are there?
There are 4 tiers, and they represent a progression. Tier 1 is partial, Tier 2 is risk-informed, Tier 3 is repeatable, and Tier 4 is adaptive.
Partial, risk-informed, repeatable, adaptive.
What's the progression look like? Well, the source describes it as moving from potentially informal, maybe even reactive ad hoc responses at Tier 1, all the way up to agile, risk-informed approaches that are continuously improving and learning at Tier 4.
So what's the point of the tiers? How do you use them?
Selecting a tier, or even just evaluating where you think your organization currently falls, helps set the overall tone for how risk is viewed and managed. They're designed to complement whatever risk management methods you already use, not replace them.
Is the goal always to get to Tier 4?
Not necessarily. Progressing to higher tiers is generally encouraged, especially if you face greater risks or have significant regulatory mandates. But it comes down to a cost-benefit analysis. Is the potential reduction in risk worth the investment to move up a tier?
Makes sense. Where can people find more help with profiles and tiers?
The NIST CSF website is the place to go. They have templates, examples, and you can find some of those community profiles we talked about there too. It's a good resource to get started.
Okay, good. Now, we mentioned earlier that the core document isn't the whole story. There are these online resources that supplement it.
Right, and they're really important because being online allows NIST and others to update them much more frequently than they could reissue the main CSF document.
Keeps things current in the fast-moving cyber world.
Exactly. The document highlights 3 key types of these online resources.
What's first, Doug?
Informative references. These are crucial. They basically provide mappings that show the relationships between the CSF core the functions, categories, subcategories, and other existing documents. Things like standards, guidelines, regulations you might already be using or need to comply with.
So they connect the CSF to other frameworks.
Yes, precisely. They help you figure out how you might achieve a specific CSF outcome by pointing you to relevant sections or controls in those other documents.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say you're looking at a subcategory in the protect function related to access control. An informative reference might point you to specific security controls in a document like NIST SP 800-53, which is a big catalog of controls, or it might link to a requirement from a particular industry regulation you have to follow.
So you still need to figure out which references apply to you.
Absolutely. You identify which of these reference documents are most relevant for your organization and your goals.
Okay, informative references. What's the second type of online resource?
Implementation examples. These provide sort of notional, simple examples of concrete, action-oriented steps that could help you achieve a specific subcategory outcome.
So practical ideas.
Yeah, they use verbs like document this, perform that, monitor this. But, and this is important, the source makes it really clear, these are just examples. They're not a complete list of everything you could do. And they're certainly not mandatory actions you must take. They're just there to spark ideas.
Got it. Examples, not requirements. And the third type?
Quick Start Guides, QSGs. These are generally shorter, more focused documents. Often they're tailored to specific audiences or specific topics within the CSF.
Like a cheat sheet.
Sort of. They distill parts of the CSF into more digestible, actionable first steps. They're really helpful for improving cybersecurity posture and risk management, especially maybe as entry points for smaller organizations or those just starting out with the framework. And NIST updates these and adds new ones as needed.
Those sound really useful, especially the accessibility point. Okay, so we've covered the core, profiles, tiers, and the online resources. Let's shift gears a bit. One of the less technical, but maybe equally important aspects of the CSF is its role in improving communication and integration within an organization, right?
Absolutely. That's a huge benefit the source highlights. Using the framework provides a solid foundation, that common language we keep mentioning, for better conversations about expectations, planning, and how you actually allocate resources for cybersecurity.
The source has a figure 5, illustrating this flow of information.
Yeah, it shows this idea of a necessary bidirectional information flow. It depicts the communication loop between, say, executives at the top who set the strategy and priorities, managers in the middle who handle specific risks and translate that strategy into actionable plans,
Okay.
and the practitioners on the ground, the folks who actually implement and operate the technology day to day.
How does the CSF help each level communicate?
Well, executives use it, especially guided by the govern function, to articulate their priorities and overall strategy. How might cybersecurity uncertainties affect the organization's main objectives? They can use the framework structure to discuss risk management strategies, including for the supply chain, define roles clearly, set policy, ensure oversight. They communicate down their expectations on risk appetite, accountability, and the resources needed.
So setting the tone from the top, what about managers?
Managers receive those objectives from the executives. They use the framework, particularly those target profiles we discussed, to translate that high-level strategy into specific risk targets. Then they develop the action plans needed to get there, bridging the gap between strategy and execution.
And the practitioners.
The practitioners are on the front lines, actually implementing the target state defined in the profiles and plans. Crucially, they also gather data on the operational risk posture, things like key performance indicators, KPIs, or key risk indicators, KRIs.
And that data flows back up.
Exactly. That data flows back up to the managers and executives. This allows them to see how the organization is actually doing against the plan, make informed decisions, and adjust the strategy or expectations if needed. The CSF provides that common language, so everyone from the server room to the boardroom understands what that data means in terms of risk outcomes. It completes the cycle.
That communication piece seems vital. What about integrating cyber risk with other kinds of risk management?
That's another key area the CSF helps with. Organizations face tons of risks, right? Privacy risks, supply chain risks, risks from AI, plus the usual financial, legal, reputational risks. An enterprise risk management, or ERM approach, tries to manage this whole portfolio together.
How does the CSF fit into ERM?
It helps translate the often technical jargon of cybersecurity into the more general risk management language that executives and boards understand. This makes it easier to include cyber risk in those broader ERM discussions. The source even points to specific NIST resources for this, like the IR 8286 series and the SP 800-221 series, which offer guidance on integrating cyber into the bigger ERM picture.
Okay, and what about integration with other specific technology-related risk programs, like privacy?
Good question. The CSF plays well with individual ICT risk management programs, too. For core cybersecurity risk management, the CSF outcomes integrate nicely with processes like the NIST Risk Management Framework, RMF, detailed in SP 837, or specific risk assessment methods like SP 830. For instance, the CSF helps you select and prioritize controls from a catalog like SP 853 to achieve the CSF outcomes you've targeted.
And privacy. You mentioned that earlier. They overlap but aren't the same.
Exactly. There's significant overlap, especially when a data breach affects confidentiality, integrity, or availability that can directly lead to privacy harms like identity theft. Figure 6 in the source illustrates this connection.
But privacy risks can happen even without a breach, right?
Absolutely. Privacy risks can arise just from how data is collected, processed, or used, even if there's no cybersecurity incident. This could lead to harms like discrimination, economic loss, or what the source calls dignity effects, like embarrassment or stigma.
So the CSF alone isn't enough for privacy.
Not entirely. This is where other resources like the NIST Privacy Framework and the Privacy Risk Assessment Methodology, or PRAM, come in. The source suggests using these alongside the CSF to address the full spectrum of privacy risks, both those linked to cyber incidents and those that aren't.
What about supply chain risk? That seems huge now.
Huge and critical. Given today's complex global supply chains, managing risk throughout them is essential. Cybersecurity supply chain risk management, or CSCRM, is the discipline focused on this.
Does the CSF address CSCRM?
It does now, more explicitly in 2.0. The govern function has a specific category, GVSC, dedicated to connecting cybersecurity outcomes to CSCRM activities. For a really deep dive on CSCRM itself, the source points to another NIST document, SP 800-161 Revision 1.
Okay. And finally, what about new technologies like AI?
Yeah, emerging tech always brings new risks. Artificial intelligence is a big one with its own unique set of challenges, including new cybersecurity and privacy risks.
Is there a framework for that too?
There is. The source mentions the NIST AI Risk Management Framework, AI-RMF. It's designed specifically to help organizations manage these unique AI risks. The idea is that by treating AI risks alongside other risks, using frameworks like the CSF and the AI-RMF together, you get more integrated and effective risk management.
Oh.
Interestingly, the AI-RMF also uses a similar structure: functions, categories, subcategories.
It sounds like there's a whole ecosystem of these frameworks emerging.
There really is, designed to work together.
So wrapping up, the NIST CSF 2.0, it's clearly not just another compliance checkbox exercise.
Not at all. It's a really powerful, flexible, adaptable tool. It's designed to help any organization, anyone in the world, get a better handle on their cybersecurity risks, understand them, assess where they are, prioritize what to do next, and communicate about it effectively.
It provides that common language, that structure, but without being overly rigid or prescriptive.
Yeah.
You tailor it to your own needs.
Exactly. You've got the core providing the outcomes, the profiles and tiers giving you the map and the gauge, and those online resources offering practical, up-to-date support. It really is a living framework designed to help you continuously improve your cyber posture in a structured, risk-informed way.
And considering that strong push for governance right at the core in 2.0, and the emphasis on integrating cyber risk with the broader business context and other risk types.
Yeah, it really shifts the perspective, doesn't it?
It makes you think. How does understanding this framework change your view on who in an organization is truly responsible for cybersecurity? It's clearly not just the IT department anymore, is it?
Definitely not. It's an enterprise-wide concern.
And how might you, listening now, use the CSF structure, that common language, that focus on outcomes to bridge communication gaps in your own environment? How can you get executives, managers, practitioners all speaking the same language about risk?
That's a great takeaway, something to really think about as you navigate your own cybersecurity journey using the CSF.